Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Zeneration Nation Podcast. Today, I've got a friend from the CEP building that we run the show out of, one Taylor Michael.
Nice to meet you.
Today, we're going to talk about, you're a programmer, correct?
Correct.
Yes. So we're going to go through and I guess you're going to explain to me your job because I've seen you work a little bit, right? I've seen all your code, and it just hurts my brain because I'm dyslexic, right? So you're gonna explain to me some of how that works, what you're working on, and how it is you got into what you do, right?
Yeah.
So let's first start out with how did you get into typing all of that string of code into your computer?
So believe it or not, I actually got into programming through 3D design. So a little bit before high school, I had an interest in 3D design, and a buddy of mine got me a copy of AutoCAD. Can't vouch for the legitimacy of the copy, but got my interest peaked in doing 3D design, and then majored in that in high school, if majoring in something in high school is a thing.
It certainly is. I can attest to it with video production.
So I did that. I had a knack for it. My teacher actually paid for me to get a ADDA mechanical drafting certification my freshman year. Finished my drafting for work by end of sophomore year, and just kind of took that with me in 11th grade. I ended up getting my first job at a software company, and that job started with just doing 3D design. And then as we ran not out but low on 3D design work, they needed more stuff so that I wasn't just sitting there. And my boss was like, hey, you want to get into programming? And sent me to a week course where I went through 2 books about this thick and came back and put me on a project in a different programming language.
So you started out doing 3D model work and then ended up just programming code. How was that switch for you?
It was a little bit interesting. In high school, I had dabbled with HTML and JavaScript, not really too much with JavaScript. So it was something I had kind of looked at but never really had a knack for. I like things that I pick up quick, and that wasn't something I picked up quick, so I kind of left it behind. And then when it became something that I was doing for work, I started to really dive deep into it. And it even took a few years of doing it before I really felt like I understood what I was doing. But once I got to that point, I kind of dug my heels in and just started learning as much as I could about all facets of it.
Okay. So you ever heard of the game Alien vs. Predator?
Absolutely.
Okay. So do you remember, or have you ever seen like the actual alien AI in that work in that game? So this is why I've never bothered to get into code. I'm absolutely terrified, right? So about 2 or 3 years ago, someone finally fixed the AI in that game because somebody had a I instead of a 1 in the code for the AI for the aliens. It was like, I think it was like a 500 million something like lines or just like characters, and they found the 1. Someone put I instead of 1, and it screwed up the entire AI code for it, making it so that the aliens just ran around randomly. And as soon as it did, the aliens themselves would run around, and they were terrifying. Like they were hunting you, going through the vents and everything. So does that happen to you with your web design a lot?
Absolutely. So we run into typos. Sometimes it's not so much a typo, but using a wrong variable or a different property name than what you're supposed to use. When it comes down to it, everything compiles out to machine code, so it's always going back to its root of zeros and ones. But when you have those typos, it just kind of throws everything off because you have this chain reaction where that one thing that went wrong, you have all these other pieces that are relying on it, and now those kind of start to fall out of line, and then that's how you end up with those kind of issues.
Is it easy to find those mistakes once they're made, or are they hide for a while until they show up?
I'd say it depends on how intricate of a bug it is, but also the platform that you're on. So certain platforms have much more in-depth development tools. So the web is the most used thing. That's what we program on the most. So most of the applications that we're running, we can just open up the debugger that's built into Chrome and find exactly what line is going wrong, inspect our variables, see what they currently are in the middle of it breaking, and then track it down that way. When you're writing in some of the lower level languages like C++, just different derivatives like that, you end up with a lot of not as many tools to work with when it comes to debugging the code, because it doesn't have tools. It's just that lower level code that runs all of the tools.
All right. John, will you pull up my screen real quick? Just hit here we go. So right now I got Google Chrome up, right? And I've got the F11 to pull up the elements. How much is that reminiscent of what you do? Like, could you mess with this? And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
how does that work for you?
So that's actually what we use for all of our debugging when we're working on web apps. We use Visual Studio Code for actually writing the code. And then we have some packages that are compiling things in the background, editing our code, or not editing our code, but compiling it so that it all works on the web. Everything that we do builds out to what you're seeing there in the HTML, as well as some JavaScript, some CSS. We have a lot of pre-compilers for the code that we write that translates it, and then you end up with that. All of those pieces fit together to build that web application, but built into those tools, Google has added a lot of things that give us the ability to stop on specific lines. So if you were to go at the very top of that to the application or source tab.
Sources, all right.
So in there you see all of your script files. If you click on one of those, you'll see it's probably minified, which means it's all kind of packed. They take all the spacing out of it, just make it really ugly, so it's hard to read.
This doesn't have your weird separators
right.
that I've seen you have.
So with this, you're able to go through, you can drop a breakpoint on a specific line of code, and then you can click a button. As soon as the execution hits that line of code, it'll actually stop there and tell you what each of your variables is equal to. So with that, we can see if a variable isn't being calculated properly, if something's being set before it's supposed to, or if we're trying to access something before it gets set. So we can trace a lot of things down just by using that. And when that doesn't work, we typically just do something called console log, which ends up being a bad thing in the long run, because then we end up filling that whole screen with a bunch of logs that are irrelevant to the user.
So
but yeah,
how do you even start with it? Because I mean, you obviously have massive lines of code, right? And there's clearly a starting point. How do you start just programming in something?
So most of our projects, we actually don't start by programming anything. We actually start with the design phase, which is even broken down from there. We have prototyping, which is us going in and doing wireframes. So we build out every screen, but in a very simple form, where it's just an outline for a button, an outline where a picture would go, some outlines where your text would be, and differences in it so that we can tell what it should be.
Well, is that in the program itself, or do you just do a picture or something?
Yeah, for that and for all of the design work that we do, we typically use tools like Adobe XD and Figma. So that allows us to build out how the app needs to function and account for where buttons should be and stuff. And then from there, once we're happy with what we have, we move on to the design phase, which is basically putting a skin on that. So that gives us our skeleton of how it's going to look and act. Then we build how it's going to actually look and feel on top of that. And then from there, some of the newer tools like Figma have the ability to take those designs and actually export some style code for us. So then when we get to the development phase and we start actually writing it, we can write out the functionality and the skeleton of how it needs to lay out, and then just paste in some code, and all of our styles, our background color, our shadows, our text colors and size, all of that just automatically matches the design file that we created.
Okay, so from the first step, you create what the basic concept looks like. Okay. Then you start making the designs itself. And then once you have those designs, you know what it's going to look like. You start implementing the actual functionality of it, correct? Yep. Okay. So then do you start from base with the code? Because we had talked about that there's coding packages for different types of things. You don't use you don't use other people's anymore, right? You make a lot of your own. Own packages.
So I try my best to. We do like open source. I mean, our main framework that we use for web applications is React.js. We use Next.js as well, which is kind of an extension on that. Those are completely open source projects that are built by Facebook for web application development. single page apps is the technical term for it. So there are certain packages. We use things for parsing out phone numbers, parsing out addresses, indexing search, stuff like that. But when it comes down to the actual like core functionality, we try to do as much of that in-house as possible, because once we've done it once, we have that code to reuse across projects. And so what we've started doing is taking all of our components that we've created from different projects, putting those all into one package that we're able to use just like all the other open source packages, but it's our own in-house package that we can then take public pieces of and let other people use. But then we have our own as well, that on any project, oh, I need a tab that pops up in front of the screen. We already have that. Drop it in, and it's good to go.
You guys have been working on like basically a website app, if I'm describing it correctly, because I don't know what your all technical terms are. But I've been seeing your progress on it as I just pop into your office and look at it. And so you're building all of that right now, and if I remember correctly, you've been working at it for a year on this one at least. Not like consistently, but like as you get the time to do it, you've been working on it, and you've basically built. I wish I had like a rough thing to show, because it is really cool when you look at it. Yeah, if I was better prepared. You've got like a really cool, basically just a plug and play system that you've pretty much developed for like a cell phone stylized app, where all you need is just the graphics and you can plug it in and people can like make their own app with like, you have like in-store integration. I think you talked about GPS like locations on it. Maybe you could explain a little bit more of that.
Yep. So we actually have a few different. We have one that we just launched, and we have one that we're still working on. The one that we're still working on is the larger project. That one is essentially a combination of social media and being able to run your own online store.
Okay.
So it allows for the networking aspect. You can connect with other people, but then you can also have your own store of products, services, events, things like that.
Now, does the networking on that, does that work like, is that integrated into the other social platforms, or does it have its own social platform on your web app?
Right. So this is meant to be its own specific social network. It's for a targeted demographic. So with that, it kind of has its own social network structure within it. So you can not only make posts on it, but you can also add portfolio pieces. So you can build out your portfolio, then take some of those pieces, add them as posts, and then when somebody goes in to look at the post, they can go directly to your profile and view your portfolio, and then say you are also selling merchandise. They can flip right over to your store, add some products to the cart, and check out.
Okay. God, I think about how you've like done it too, and it
I can't take credit for most of that one. That's been my team behind me.
Oh, is it all John?
John and Andres have both been plugging away, and Andres has another guy that helped out some as well. And I mean, most of it goes to them. Absolutely, I've helped on like two or three pieces.
I watched you build that slidey bit. It like went all the way up, and then you got to stop at the right point. I was like, I mean, he programmed that code in. I was like, God damn, how did you do that?
That was a fun bit to write. Yeah,
it was fun watching you do it, because I was just like, there's no way. I make the worst spelling mistakes. This is why I can never do code, right? I can't spell the properly sometimes. Or I'll double cap things. Like it'll be the first two letters, and it's awful.
Your finger just stays on the shift a little longer than it should.
Yeah, when I was building this business, right? I was told I had people tell me that I needed to make my own website, and I was like, you realize that I can barely spell, right? And you want me to write a coded website? Like I'll try and learn, but man, I'm gonna make so many mistakes. It's gonna be awful.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of people who come to us, wanting to do websites on like Wix and Squarespace and things like that. And those platforms absolutely do have their purpose, and they help out with somebody who really doesn't have the budget to go in and do a small website with a web design company. But when it comes to actually building out the sites and stuff, I definitely recommend going to somebody who knows how to set something up, because even if you want your own customizable area where you can add in, posts and content and all that kind of stuff, we can do all of that in a way that's still really easy for you, but you still have a fast, custom integrated site that we can link out to anything you need.
Yeah, because when I was first starting, right, I had an idea for how I wanted my website to be, and after actually talking to you guys, my brain goes, "Oh my God, that is," because like I wanted like a full, I wanted to be able to host my videos locally on that website, and I've been learning that that's a terrible idea because that costs a lot in like
Yep.
bandwidth, and I mean I would totally just do it on the extra computer I have, but the bandwidth requirement to have
Hmm.
those play, the amount of like pages I would want. But this was also like in reference to having like a full staff. Like I want to
Right.
have a five man team working for me, and so I could always produce content. And that is still the dream.
Oh, absolutely.
I will have that one day as soon as
It's in the future.
this gets better. But like, yeah, the so explain to me the difference between what you guys do and what Squarespace and other companies like that offer. Because from what I understand, they just have like panels, but you
Hmm.
guys have custom, like custom websiting.
Yep.
So like the bars and even the page outline. So
Yep.
how's the difference work there?
So with something like Squarespace or Wix, they're basically giving you a tool that you don't have to do any code whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So with that comes a lot of overhead because they have to make sure that the code that gets auto-generated will always work under all circumstances. So then you introduce limitations. If you drop out a container, you have some properties that you can edit, but not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
There's also additional containers that are added within it. It kind of muddies up the
So
end result
what's a
of the
container?
code.
Is that just like
So
prepackaged
on a
or?
website, you have, and in like the screen that you pulled up,
Mm-hmm.
in that HTML code, you have individual tags that can wrap around each other. And so when you have one at the root with other things inside of it, it's considered a container.
So is that like these folders or?
So if you go back to the first tab
All right.
up at the top,
The top.
very, very top, I
Hold
forget what it's
up.
called.
Oop, that's the wrong
Elements,
one.
I believe.
There we go. Elements.
Yep,
Yep,
top there,
elements.
yep. So each of those that's wrapped in the angle brackets,
Mm-hmm.
that's considered a node within the HTML. Each of those represents an element or
Okay.
some form of information. Each element is something on the screen. So in most cases, you'd use a div if you want a container. A div is essentially a box that can contain other things inside of it. So when you lay a div on the screen, it's one element that can have more inside of it. What we do is we write all of that from scratch. So if we want a container on the screen that has a background color and an image and some text inside of it, we put a div with an image element, some text elements, and we put all of that together and we style it the way that we need.
Okay.
When you use something like Squarespace or Wix, because they're giving you that drag and drop ability where you can just take a whole pre-done section with a background image and a header and all that that's already styled for you, and all you have to do is change your image and your color.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just dragging out a div, an image, and some text and a little bit of code to style it. You're dragging out everything that they've put in there for all of the different variants, all of that. And a lot of times, as you start to modify those to make it look exactly how you want, it actually ends up with a lot more code than what's actually necessary and a lot more HTML elements like you saw in there.
Okay.
So you end up with slower page speeds because your files are a lot bigger. They contain a lot more code. They're referencing frameworks that aren't even being used because it's loading in frameworks for pro features, even if you're not paying for pro.
Oh, really?
So you have all these different background pieces, and I can't say that 100% because they could have pieces in there that conditionally load or unload pieces. But in most cases, even when you're doing something like WordPress where you have a little bit more customizability than those bigger drag and drop builders, you end up with plugins and a lot of extra stuff that just doesn't need to be there. So when you go from the ground up, it does take longer to go from the ground up, and it takes more planning, but you have way more extensibility in the amount of things that you can control and change on the website. I mean, it literally is the sky is the limit. What you can think of and what your programming ability is
Yeah,
what you
'cause
can do.
When I asked you about this, I think it was like last week or something, you told me that the reason you didn't like using other people's packages, right, was because certain parts of them were locked, or you just didn't have access to it,
Yep.
or you just had to go through and figure out how do they even bother to code it, right?
Yep.
So that you weren't really starting from a place where you knew it was going. It's like the It's like the image of somebody having a large server room, and then there's the Ethernet cables everywhere.
Yep.
And the guy's just sitting there in the corner with a cigarette, and you're like, yeah, I've been here for long enough. I know how it generally works. But the new guy's just like, what am I doing?
Yep. Yeah, and really, it's a great analogy for it, because even just inheriting a project from someone, when you come onto a new company and you're looking over a new project, or somebody drops an old developer and they bring you on whatever, that can be a really overwhelming task, because we're talking about the company I used to work for. I was on a project for 6 years. By the time I left, if you took all of the individual files that I had done and you smashed them all together, it was well over 200,000 lines of code. And that was after taking the entire system and reducing it by about 60% in size, then building on it again, and then optimizing it again, and just continually optimizing and building on it over that 6-year period that I was on the project. And it was still, even after cutting out that much stuff, it was still that large of a project.
How do you even go about cutting out stuff? Because when you build it, you're making it so that it works, right? How do you go through and just cut out stuff? Doesn't that just break the whole process?
Well, so something you said there actually stands out. You said you're building it so it works. So something that a lot of developers are guilty of, myself included, is we are very task-oriented. And so when we go to do a task, we think about that task, how it should function, and that's it. I can't say for everybody, obviously, but something that you try to do as a developer is to broaden that perspective, so that when you're working on one task, you're not just thinking about what that task needs to do. You're thinking about how what that task does is also going to affect these other things that are already in the software, as well as these newer things that need to get added in after this one, and all rely upon this one. And so what will happen sometimes is, if you're too focused on just that task, you write something and then you go to do something else that relies on this, and it doesn't work because it wasn't accounted for, because it was just focusing on what needed to get done in that moment. And so there ends up being oversight, or times where you do something a little bit better and you go back to the previous implementations and re-implement it with the new code that is less code and more efficient.
Okay, so then okay, so you talked about making it connect better. Is this like how the layering works, right? So you have the layering for it, and then maybe something has to go underneath it or side by side it, and it has like some sort of, I don't even know how the conflict works. I mean, this is one of those fields that you have to like really be in to understand.
So I think I could give you an example. So in programming, you have asynchronous programming and synchronous programming. Synchronous means everything that's happening is on a straight line. When something goes to happen, if this is choked up for any reason, the whole line stops until this is done.
Okay.
Once this is done, the line opens back up and it keeps going. With asynchronous programming, or multi-threaded programming, whatever, you have the ability to not just have a single line, but then to spawn other lines off of that.
So is that layering that you see in there?
Right. So the goal, the modern goal, is to never have the user in a spot where they're waiting. You never want somebody sitting where they have a little spinning loader on it. You don't want them to be waiting for data to pop up on their screen. You want to give them some form of still being able to interact with whatever your application is while things are going in the background.
Is that
traditionally
is that the Google dinosaur?
Yeah.
For being offline?
Yep. So in traditional computers, back in the day before multi-threading was a thing, you had instances where and even in video games, if certain things aren't being tasked out properly, whatever, you have instances where everything just kind of freezes for a second, and then all of a sudden it catches up, and you'll notice that you catch up in the new position as if things continued happening in the background, and then all of a sudden the screen caught up to where you actually were. So your character continues to move forward even though the screen is frozen, and then all of a sudden you're caught up to where your character moved to. That's because input and all of those extra things are now branching off into their own separate threads, where their execution, were it to get halted, will not stop the execution of the actual code running to keep everything going. So now you have a much more seamless thing where you pull up an order screen and your order's processing and you have that loading spinner, but you're not locked on that screen until the order processes. You can hit done and let the order process in the background, or you can dismiss that tab down and keep doing something else while that spinner is still going, because everything that it's doing is happening in the background and not blocking the rest of the code from running.
So there's like a primary channel then, right?
Yep.
And then you have all
typically the UI thread would be what you'd refer to it as.
Okay. And so then there's the side channels, which are the other stuff that's going on. So like just the minimal processes, or just, I guess, secondary effects. So then how do you know what's supposed to go on each of those layers? Do you have something that you prioritize more, or do you, how does that work?
That typically just depends on what the application is. With web development, it's gotten a little bit nicer because now they had asynchronous programming, but now they've introduced workers as well, where you can actually use your GPU thread to do really intensive computation in the background and then return those results back up so that you're not choking the computer's CPU. But it really just comes down to the application. So typically things like data fetching, harsh computation where it's going to take a long time, something that's more than addition, subtraction, multiplication, whatever. If it's something that's going to be really taxing on a system, especially on lower hardware, because you want to account for all devices. So if somebody's running it on, a $50 Android phone and they pull it up in Chrome, you still want it to feel responsive to them. So you want to do everything that you can to kind of delegate those resources out. And
so you're still going for the lowest common denominator.
Exactly.
So then,
within reason, of course.
Well, yeah, I don't think you're going for the iPhone 3 or the iPhone 4, although people still have that one.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
So, all right. So then, when you're nearing completion of an app, or not even just an app, but a website, or however you have it, what do you do to like cap it off? Like, how do you finish it and then it just like locks up and then it just waits for you to unlock it later, or is this like always accessible? And well, I guess maybe it is accessible if I'm able to just pull Google's their control panel off, right?
So we have a few different pieces to that. We have our source control, which is where all of our code lives. We typically most developers use GitHub for all of their repositories and everything. So each repository is a project. Inside of that is our whole code base. But what it does is it allows us to do version tracking. So as we make changes on our files and then we commit those changes, it will show us line by line what changed between the previous version and that version and all previous versions. So at any point, if a bug is introduced in a certain change, we can find that specific change and just rip it out to fix the bug, and then reevaluate that on its own branch, make sure everything's good, and then merge it back into the main pipeline of code and make sure that that's always solid.
So you don't even need it to be in there to like test it or something. You can just flat out steal it and like double check that it's doing what it's doing in a vacuum, right? Is that what you're saying? So there's
I'm not sure I understand.
There's the main line of code, right? And then you have your little side channels. And if you're testing something and it bugs out, you're able to just rip the code out and test it on a separate line somewhere else.
Yep. So basically, it's like multiple versions of the same file existing in almost like sub-realities, right? And then you decide that you want to make a new change. So you jump over to this new clone of the original, make all of your changes. So now at this point, this new one is everything in this one plus some. So you can test all your changes without ever touching the original pipeline of code. And then once you're done with those, you do a pull request, which is basically saying, hey, I made these changes. I want to put them back into this branch. And then another developer goes through, reviews, make sure all your code is good, and then those get merged back in. And now the main pipeline is ready to be updated to push out for the site.
Okay. And so we talked about this one too, but I feel other people should know about it, right? So you build all this, right? And then where does it live? Because it's not just, floating out there in the ether of space. How exactly is it running? Because it has to run off of something.
Good old web servers. So some people prefer to have their own in-house web servers that they run off of. We don't currently offer anything like that. We don't even have our own in-house servers for our stuff. Our most common solutions are we do a lot of our work with Firebase as our back-end server. And then on applications where we don't use Mongo for our back-end server, but that's more for the data. Firebase also provides a hosting solution. So while all of our data lives there, we're also able to push the application there and let the hosting live there as well. So then when you are requesting a page, it's able to quickly go get that data, pull it back, and then return it to you without an extra step. More recently, we've been doing most of our projects using Next.js, which is just that extension on top of React. With Next, the company that created Next, Vercel, has their own Vercel hosting site where they have support for several different types of
so they let you host
apps.
their application or whatever you're working on their
web
software?
servers.
Okay.
So it depends on what you're hosting, but typically they're just Express web servers. And then the thing that they do that's really, really nice is we're able to, so this product that we just launched on Friday, Pixelmm, we have that up on pixelmm.com. Any time that we publish to a specific branch on our GitHub for it, it automatically redeploys out to the Vercel hosting. Now, the cool thing about that is we can actually set up some in-betweens. So when we're testing things, we can set up subdomains for things like alpha.pixelmm.com, beta.pixelmm.com. We used all of these through the testing phase, then we had preorder.pixelmm.com, which was where you could go on and actually make the pre-order. And each of these were associated with different branches on GitHub. So we would make the changes in our main branch. We'd have our own offshoots where we'd make those and merge them back to the main. And then once we had tested that and we knew, okay, this is a solid build, then we just push it to that other branch and it goes right out to Vercel and it's deployed.
Well, I'm glad
they make it a little too easy.
I'm glad you did bring up the product you just launched, because I did want to talk about it, because
Absolutely.
I apparently missed your guys' launch Friday because I was doing the show. So you had a really good presentation earlier today.
Appreciate that. I can't take credit. I mean,
no,
I answered questions I didn't really present, but
you didn't give the
Daniel did great.
But he did do a really good job. I was actually really curious, and I liked the way you guys handle business for it, right? And I even think your prices are pretty affordable. So why don't you talk a little bit about Pixelmm? I like the name.
Yeah, so I don't know that I can do it as well of justice as if Daniel were sitting here with us, but basically Pixelmm is meant to be a local search engine. Local in the sense that it's local to you, the user who's actually searching on it, and the businesses who are listed on it. So we're not trying to eliminate the big guys, Google, Yahoo,
I know you're
Bing,
gonna have a
any
hard
of
fight doing
those.
that anyways.
Our goal is to enhance the experience for the local mom and pop shops. So, there's hashtags like shop local and all of that. We want people to take that a step further. When you search something on Google, right? You search burgers.
Yep.
What's the first thing you see at the
It's
top
gonna
of the
be
page?
one of the main chains.
And it's most likely going to be 3 advertisements. So those people paid more. They're at the top. That's that. There's also I'm losing my train of thought. Sorry.
It's all right.
There's the issue of reviews, right? You go in, you have somebody who orders a coffee. It happens to come out a little bit cold because it was waiting longer than it should have. That person is having a horrible day. They go on, write you a terrible review. Now you're knocked down a few points on your rating. You're a small company. You only have a few reviews. You get that one-star review. That's a big impact, and there's a lot of people that happens to. So what we're trying to do is essentially give a platform that is not going to bombard you with ads. There's no ads on it whatsoever. We have 3 different tile sizes that you can pick from, so that on the home screen, that's what you're represented by. The tile sizes are X1, 5, and 10. At the lowest point, the X1, you get the smallest tile, but it's $1 a month, $10 for an entire year. Super cheap, super affordable. Something Daniel always says is, if your business doesn't have a sign, it's a sign of no business.
Exactly. He said that earlier today.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Well, hold on, real quick. What made you guys decide on this tile style base? Is it just because of the way that phone apps are developed, or is it just?
So I can't take credit for that. This was the idea. Honestly, was 100% Daniel's. This is something he's had an idea for 10 years or so.
Oh, so okay. Well, I think I can figure out where it is because it just popped in my head. Right. He was obviously sitting at his Windows phone or Windows computer, and he went over to the start button and he opened it up, and he saw the little panels on there. And he was like, we should make an app around that.
Well, and so as you know, Daniel has his car as well, Exotic Mobile Marketing, and with that he has the individual hexagons on there that people can advertise through as well. So the idea was kind of going off of that as well. I think the idea for the website came first, and then he did the car, and then he ended up we just sat down to talk one day, and he was like, hey, I have this idea, but I'm not really sure how it would work. And he told me about the tile layout and everything, and I pulled up a little just like code editor thing in the browser and wrote like just a little bit of code real quick and had what he wanted, and he was like, all right, cool. And so from there we just kind of move forward on it.
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember and understand the basics of this app because I think it's pretty neat, but I'm still a bit confused. So you guys went with 3 different sizes, right? And then he mentioned something about being able to spend more for more tiles. How does that work if you're already advertising for like a tile on it?
So the idea is a tile represents a business, just like businesses might have multiple locations or a person might own multiple businesses. You're not limited to one tile. So even say franchises, right? There's a lot of McDonald's, but each individual McDonald's is typically owned by a franchise owner. That franchise owner may want to drive business to his McDonald's specifically, so he may go in and buy one tile. If he has multiple other McDonald's, we recommend getting the X10, the biggest one for your home base where you want to drive the most traffic, but then you can go in and get X1s for all of your other locations. That way, when somebody goes to search you, you're still getting all of the keywords and benefits and everything, but you're pulling up in multiple locations because everything is location based. So when you hit the app, it takes the IP address of the request, which as long as you're not masking your IP address with a VPN or something, which a lot of people do. And that's totally fine. We're trying to give as personalized of a result as we can be without intruding on your location. We don't ask you for your location. We give you the option of putting in a zip code and a radius.
Oh, so you can,
but we don't.
You don't have to have your location on.
No, we do not ask for your location at all because with what we have, in the future we may add that, but as of right now, with what we have no reason to ask for your location. There's no point in getting data that we don't need.
That's good because I have to keep my GPS on because I hate it. I don't like being tracked. I've got family who's on this like Go 360 or something where they all know where each other are. I'm like, no, I'm not letting you track me. Are you kidding me? No, I if you want to know where I'm going, I'll tell you when I feel like it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, so we do our best where when you initially hit the page, we take that IP address that comes from the request itself. So that's going to be a very generalized IP address location. And then we base our results off of that. So those initial tiles that you see are going to take that IP address and go out from there. Then once you put in a zip code and a radius, anything that you search, it will only give you back tiles that are relevant to that radius specifically.
Now, do you have like a map, like a Google Map? You can click in an area and it'll generally pop up the stuff that's there.
Not yet.
You don't have that built in yet.
Not yet, but
that is something
it could come in the future.
Okay, so you guys had an interesting policy, which I totally agree with, where you guys didn't want religious or political, or there was something else, and I can't remember what it was. Three things.
Sex, politics, or religion.
I think that's frankly the best way to do it because I don't think those things should ever be involved in business in general.
Absolutely.
As long as it's not in that field,
right. Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be we had a couple questions this morning about like nonprofits and stuff like that, and we're not saying that nonprofits or people who are backed by a faith-based organization, stuff like that. We're not saying that that's not okay. We're just saying that putting your business on there is putting your business on there. So the things that are on the tile, the picture that's on the tile, they shouldn't be anything that would be offensive to somebody. You know, so obviously if you have, I can't really speak too much to that kind of stuff because I developed it. I'm not the one behind that, you know. But that's the best kind of way that I can put it. A lot of it, I'm sure, will end up being on a case-to-case basis when we have discrepancies or if somebody is uncomfortable with something that's on there, we will have to review it. But you know, that comes par for the course.
That whole nonprofits thing being an issue with it, I was like, yeah, I was sitting back there listening to it, and I was just like, man, I don't know how you deal with that one because I mean, people could get kind of upset about that. But
Absolutely.
I think if you're looking for a nonprofit specifically, you might as well just Google it, right?
Well, and again, that brings me back to this is a business search, right? You're searching for a business. You're not searching to have
it's not Google.
Any of those things advertised to you. You're looking for a business that does a specific thing, and that's what you should be finding.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess that's really the difference between Google Maps and like Google Maps is going to show you everything, but when you're looking for a business, it's when you go to your app because it's showing you everything. And by the way, I do like the no stars reviews. You guys really spoke to me with the how do you word it? The having the consumer make the choice in the transaction and whether to go, because it's like something that I'm pushing heavily on here is like individual responsibility and being like people really need to just make their own choices on things.
Absolutely.
They can't just listen to everybody else. I mean that group think, right? So I think that's a great point on your guys' app.
Yeah, and you know, again, it's trying to put the power back in the hand of the user. We want people to find things that are near them. We want people to shop local in their economy, help boost their local economy. So as this grows and spreads to other locations, not just in our area, then we'll have launches in those areas, and then those people that are part of that community can start using it and branching out to their local economy and really boosting those local businesses. And when you need something like an electrician or a plumber or a developer, you search that word, developer, and boom, you're going to see anybody who is a software developer, or in that case, maybe somebody who does building development, you know.
Yeah. How do you even like get into like local communities? How does that even work, right? Because you said launch in different areas. Do you have like a server specifically for that area, or do you build? How does that even work?
Yep. So that gets more into the technical side of things. Our server just holds all of the info about everyone. We have it sectioned off and read and write access so that specific parts can only be accessed by specific things. But basically, when you search for somebody, or even better, when you're adding your business and you go in to put the address in, as you're typing your address, it starts populating addresses that match what you're typing. Once it populates enough that you can click on your address, you click yours, and then in the background what it's doing is it's actually taking that address, asking Google, hey, what's the latitude and longitude? Okay. Then we store that in the server, so now we have just the latitude and longitude, and it's really easy to find location based off of that. So then from there, while we display the address to you, when you actually search something, if you put in a zip code and a radius, it's then using that with the latitude and longitude of all of the businesses in the server and only looking for ones that are within that kind of circle that it creates.
But you still need the local businesses in the area, right, to get onto the app, sign up, and then create it. It's not, you guys aren't individually putting it in like another one that we know and talked about, and I don't remember the name of.
Yeah, so we've made the process as easy as possible. I mean, you go onto the app and you sign up, you put your business info in. It's literally that easy. We actually have some guided steps. So there's a page on there. It's kind of modeled after what we had for the pre-order phase. It's just why Pixelmm. So you click on that. And towards the bottom, there's some pricing tables. If you click on a price on any of those pricing tables, it will actually guide you through step by step, signing up, setting up your business with that specific yearly or monthly X1, 5, or 10, all the way through putting in your info, putting in your payment info, and boom, as soon as you've subscribed, your tile shows up on the home screen.
Okay, well, I'm glad you mentioned subscribing, right? Because you have like it's a monthly or yearly base with different prices. What happens when the subscription ends? Do you guys hold on to the information? Keep like you guys have like a 0.5 tile that just sits there in the background, or?
So we actually have it doing everything in the background where anytime you subscribe, it sets your account to active, which shows your tile. If for some reason, so all of the subscription stuff is just recurring. So once you've put your card info in, it will auto renew for you. If your card expires, you decide you don't want it, and you cancel any of those, it'll automatically switch your account to no longer be active, and your tile will just no longer show up on the home page or search results.
Okay, so you guys don't have any like minimum, like just to help build it out. It's entirely based off of the subscription itself.
Correct.
Okay. So explain to me exactly what a business gets out of it, because it's important. I might have to do it, although I don't know what I would do with a Pixelmm with my business. But explain how it works, because there's a couple menus involved.
So as you go through, the key features are searchability, obviously. But like I said earlier, we're not trying to cut out the bigger search engines. The idea is that even if you don't use Pixelmm, right? So you're on Pixelmm, but somebody's searching on Google. Okay. Your Pixelmm page for your business will then show up on Google. So when somebody searches for your business based on the keywords, whatever, our site will be indexing those pages to rank your Zeneration. I gotta get the
Media.
whole thing.
Zeneration Media.
Okay,
it's just Zeneration Media.
That's what I was gonna say, but I felt like it was.
It's that, and then the show is Zeneration Nation.
That's where I was thrown off.
See,
Okay,
it gets thrown off, right? Because I was stupid and didn't do the other one for the company name.
So, Zeneration Media, right? We search Ocala Media Company. Based on that, if you don't have a website, you just have a Pixelmm tile, right? Now you can get Zeneration Media, Pipe, Pixelmm showing up in Google, where when someone clicks on it, it takes them into Pixelmm and shows them all of your business information.
So does this show up in the Google Marketing, that box whenever you're looking at businesses, right? You know the one I'm talking about.
I think so.
Is it GCM or
GMB?
GMB.
The Google My Business?
Yeah, Google My Business.
So
does it show up in that box?
Currently, we don't have integration for that, but that is something that we're looking into.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, if I remember correctly, right, it was you would click on one of the tiles, right, and then it would bring you into looking at the business name, and then there was like social media links and GPS location, correct?
Yep. So when you click on a tile, the first thing you get is some quick actions. So the most common things somebody wants to do, you get making a call, going straight to their website, and I believe getting directions, maybe.
Yeah.
I could be off
the
on
location.
that.
Does that link into Google Maps? Like when
it does.
If you press into it?
If you click on the phone icon, it takes you right into making a call. If you click on the address, it takes you into the maps. So you get those three quick actions, and then you click more info, and that'll expand out into a longer list where you get the full address, you get the description of the business, you get all of their social media links, which show up in these nice little colorful tiles that we worked really hard on.
I saw them. They looked pretty.
We didn't work that hard on them, but they ended up looking nicer than we had hoped. So
they looked clean, is what you're
appreciate that. Yeah, but yeah, so it's just a quick way to get to the info and to get to the local business and make your own decision, not based on what other people say. Another analogy that Daniel has a bunch of these that I'm just stealing from his presentations.
Yeah, just steal it right.
You know,
just don't let him know.
say you decided to never go see Star Wars because a couple people told you it was the worst movie they'd ever seen.
I don't know who would ever do that.
10 years later, you decide to finally go and watch it. You'd be pretty upset that you didn't go watch it because of those few people. And in the same way, in some cases, reviews are really good and they do serve their purpose, especially on things like products and that kind of stuff, But in so many cases, especially with mom and pop shops, they're local people working so hard to do what they're doing, and they're going to make mistakes. And so when you have somebody who has 3 or 4 good reviews from the people who actually took the time to go do that, and then you have someone who has that one bad experience, and they go, and now you have 5 reviews, but one of them's a 1-star because that one person had a bad day.
Would you guys then consider doing so? Like maybe if you guys had were able to get a determination right, instead of like removing the star review entirely, because it's not without some merit, right? Maybe for like franchises or places with multiple locations, maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing to have that as like an optional option. Like not one that maybe like something that you just have to turn on, right?
Well, and so what I would come back to that with is, while people who have franchises are they're not allowed to use it, obviously. They're not the ones that are looking for the star reviews. The corporate company would be the one that's looking for those star reviews. The franchise owner would be looking to drive traffic specifically to their franchise location.
You're right, because it is going based off of the company or the
and so our goal is really to put that power back in the local business owner versus that corporate side of things where it's all kind of funneled to them.
That one's still more of a Google Maps mindset, because the reason I even brought it up, right, was because you never know when, like mom and pop places, you get destroyed like that, but like franchises, you don't ever. Some people just start them up to make the money. They're not really there putting their heart. They're just like, all right, I'm just gonna hire some people. We've got the pre-made recipes and guidelines, and it's garbage. I mean, I'm sure we've all been to some restaurant that's awful.
Absolutely.
Like there's a 5-star. I think there's like 4 or 5-star pizzas around us in like a 30-minute radius.
Yeah.
And there's one down in Bellevue that I love them. They're awesome, right? Because they're the only 5-star in town that has a walk-in. You don't have to pay, like it's like $16 for a large pizza there, or $16 everywhere else for a large pizza, because they don't give you any like walk-in bonus. But you go there, it's $12 to walk in and get a large pizza. Yeah, that's why I'll only go to that 5-star pizza, and I give them 5 stars because they've got that in the name. Deal. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean that's why I consider that, because I think there is still some merit to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're right though. If you're
and again, we're not trying to eliminate that. If you want a star review, you can still go Google it. Our goal isn't to eliminate the need for that, because it does still have its merit. Absolutely. Our goal is just to give an additional platform that gives the business owners a little more control and the users a little more control to find somebody that they want to use based on, they see it, it's an electrician, they call, they talk to the person, seems like a trustworthy business, they get their business done.
So, well, then maybe a better implementation would be not on the business owner's side. Maybe don't even like have them see the stars or something, but like do a maybe just a like-dislike kind of thing with on the user's end. That's just an option for them to turn on, right? Maybe something like that, or is that still going in that same direction, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, it really is meant to. It's like the yellow pages. It's an index for people to find things quick and not have that clouded view of somebody based on that.
You're right. No, I'm just trying to like.
No,
I'm giving maybe.
We also are trying to build it off of what the community has to say, but something that Daniel's been very firm about from the beginning is no reviews, no star ratings, ever. And we don't want to lose that, because it can cloud judgment so easily. Somebody who has 500 likes versus somebody who has 5 likes is inherently going to be clicked on first, even though that one with the 5 likes may just be somebody who started a little bit later than the other person.
Yeah.
We're taking that weight out of it and allowing both to be seen on the same level, and then the user gets to make that judgment.
Yeah, you guys are right on that. I think that's definitely the better way to go. I'm just like, throwing that kind
No,
of
yeah.
stuff out there, just challenging a little,
we welcome it.
giving you a little ball busting.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So I think we've pretty much covered the Pixelmm launch, right?
Yep.
I want to talk to you about a more fun topic now, right?
Okay.
Let me just under the table grab my anonymous mask. How much do you know about how hacking works, right? Because I have like the most bare basic knowledge of it. That's not like computers.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your knowledge of how that works?
Yep.
You weren't expecting this at all, huh?
No.
Because it is code based, correct? You have
Absolutely.
to you have to write
yeah.
code in order to do it.
There's a lot of easy hacking to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Easy hacking. You can pretty easily set up a Linux box that automatically has a ton of software on it from boot that just automatically you can go in and scan a network and try to brute force your way into it.
So the box does it itself? You don't... It's not sitting at the
there's
computer
some
typing?
There is some stuff that you have to know, but once you can upload a file of keywords that you want it to use to try and brute force its way in and set it and forget it and walk away and let it just do its thing. It's not a very reliable method because the longer the keyword list, the longer it takes because it has to do each one in a set amount of time before it can try again. And then there's the lower level stuff. I know a little.
You know a little?
I know a little.
I know like a single term, right? Are you aware of what a script kiddie is?
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's like legitimately the only hacking word I know,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure you would be able to describe it a little better than I could, right?
Probably not, just because I haven't done a lot with it.
Okay. So my basic understanding of a script kiddie is someone who takes a far better and more accomplished hacker's line of code,
Mm-hmm.
and then they just implement it into whatever they're trying to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, I'm pretty sure that's how a lot of just hack or your basic ransom software works, right? Like I think we heard from the pipeline, the what was the group, Dark Side. They sold the software, and basically their software was used in a script kiddie event to take on the pipeline, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty crazy how that stuff happens, and I mean, unfortunately, it's a lot more. It's a lot easier than most people think it is,
Mhm.
especially when people start messing around with stuff that they shouldn't mess around with.
Because it's just like getting someone to open up a line of code, right?
Yes and no. It's finding insecurities in somebody else's code.
Okay.
So in the event of the pipeline, right, they had software running to control the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
So what the other people did is they wrote software that could go in and take advantage of the vulnerabilities of the other software to then gain control of it and do what they wanted.
So how does that even work? Like, how do you take over someone else's software?
Well, so in that case, they had it, I'm sure, hooked up to some form of public network.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, it's getting yourself into that network and being able to target the device over the network.
So how my understanding of how the attack actually happened was someone working there opened up Boobs Now email. I'm not even kidding. It was one of those stupid ones where it's like click to see pictures of boobs, and it installed the ransom software on the computer.
Yep. So that's just, I think that would be technically considered a Trojan.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the Trojan horse parable, right?
Yeah.
So it comes in unsuspecting, you open it, and all of a sudden your whole village gets murdered. That's,
a little more than a village.
It was a little more than a village,
city.
but same basic principle. They send a corrupted file, essentially, that when you open the email, that file then infects your computer by opening up things that wouldn't normally be open. And again, it's based on insecurities in software. So you not only have the insecurities of just email in general.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it's still a major form of communication. It's so insecure.
I don't know either. I've been using Discord.
Yeah.
Way
So You have the insecurities of email, then you have the insecurities of whatever email app you're using. You have, if you're running your email straight out of a browser, you have the insecurities of running it out of the browser versus an actual app that has security. If you're not running any type of antivirus, you have the security issues there. And then if you aren't using a VPN, you have security issues of being tracked. And if your computer's not fully up to date with its ransomware and stuff, and your firewall is not configured properly, there's a lot of pieces where you can sneak between in the code that isn't as secure as it could be.
So does it, like, how does it work? Like, is the code just set to, like, lock a computer up? Like, it's like, okay, well, now the code's run, and it goes into like, what, come on, brain.
BIOS.
The BIOS, the operating system, and it's just like, well, now you're not able to open up unless I have this key, this just line of code inserted in me that tells my programming to just stop, right?
Yep.
That's the basic.
So that would be like ransomware would be locking up certain. I've had older computers that I had family members go on, and all of a sudden, you know, they opened something, and my computer, you couldn't get into the root hard drive, file system permission, errors, all kinds of stuff. Those typically, they'll inject something in where the pop-up comes up and it says file permission, error, whatever, but then it'll have like a phone number for support, and it's not actually Microsoft. You know, those ones, they've gotten a lot slicker with that kind of stuff, but it used to be pretty cheesy. Like if you didn't realize it was fake, but they prey on people who don't have necessarily, not, I wouldn't say the common sense, but just the technical knowledge to know what is actually part of your operating system popping up a prompt and what's not, you know.
You ever seen some of this there's like channels that track scammers, and
get control of their computer.
Get control of their computer.
Yep.
So I was watching this one, how they did it, where they got this lady to open up. First, they had her install on her computer one of the like monitors and remote control software, right? Then they had her open up her command or her CMD, and then they would enter in code on there, and it absolutely did nothing except when you hit enter, it like put a thing. And then what they would do was they were telling her that this was transferring from her bank account because they had her open up her bank account on a tab in Google. And then they tell her to do a transfer to get a refund for something. And then as she's going to hit enter, they tell them, they'd be really friendly with them. And then they tell them that they just need to do a refund thing, get a request, and they would, at the last second, double tap zero in there. So instead of doing like $200 or $300, it would look like they just refunded $30,000 back from Bank of America. And then they'd start telling them that, oh, they could lose their job or something, and they make them feel really bad about it and trusting. And what they'll do is they'll actually, like, you know, go into the Google HTML and black out their screen, because apparently they can do that with the software. And then they'll edit the HTML to make it look like that refund that went through was the $30,000.
Yep.
And then they'd be like, okay, well, we need to fix this now. You can't send us the money through like a wire transfer. You have to mail it. So they'll have to go out and they'll stay on the phone with you the whole time.
Yep.
It's not biohacking, because that's something totally different.
No, yeah.
But it is like, what is it? Emotionally hacking somebody.
Yep. Psychological hacking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's preying on, you know, if you're an older if you're 70 years old and, you know, you use an iPad and that's your main computer, and then all of a sudden you have this Windows computer that you're on, and you're being told that it's busted by somebody who's saying that they're from Microsoft, they're preying on people who are going to have that fear and try to get it taken care of as quick as possible because they're so afraid of what's going to happen. And they count on you not expecting or not calling their bluff, essentially. My cousin actually had somebody try to do it to him, and when he hung up on them, they called back and tried to say that they were calling the police and bringing them, and he's like, okay,
Oh yeah,
Let them come in. I'm here at work. Let them let them storm in.
I had the one saying that my social security card was found in a vehicle in Texas, and that it was connected to a murder, and I was like, man, I wonder how it got into Texas. I lost that thing like a month ago because I had legitimately lost my social security card, and I was like, really, in Texas? How did it get there? And I went through the whole time, and then he eventually like. He had like someone else get on and say that he was like working for the police there, and it's just two Indian guys talking to me, and I'm just laughing like, oh my god, no, not my soul, I'm gonna go to jail.
Yeah, it's crazy what some people will do, and you know it's all for nothing more than a quick penny. That's it.
What was really sad too, right, is it's majorly affecting the elderly at this point, and I really hope that, you know, our generation, right, is seeing it going on, and when we're old, it's not going to happen to us, right, or they come up with some other stupid scam that gets us.
And along with that too, being able to help those people who might be more susceptible to it to not be as susceptible, you know, helping explain things like don't open emails that you don't know where they're coming from, and just simple little things like that we take for granted because it's something that we've done our whole lives. You know, most, especially you've had technology around you as much as possible. I didn't have a computer until I was probably 7 or 8 years old.
Oh man,
then I built my first at 11. But
well,
you know,
you're like 27, right?
28, yeah.
28. All right, yeah, dude. You like you got your first computer like a year before me.
Yeah.
Like in the continual lifestyle, I got my first computer when I was 5.
Yep. I mean, now, you know, kids are growing up with tablets, and along with, you know, the educational games that they have and stuff like that, there's a big push being for teaching kids early on how to stay away from dangerous things on the internet and not open things. And, you know, we should be doing the same for other people as well. If we know those things and we take them for granted because we just grew up around them, we should at least take that time to go and talk to people that we know that might be more susceptible to that kind of stuff.
That's
you know?
why I am such a big advocate for Ad Block Plus. I found that at the age of 12, and I have not had a virus since, man. You get rid of everything that's just dirty and wrong and prevents it from showing up. And then they always like, turn off your ad blocker. No, I like my computer, right?
Yeah.
No, the fun joke that I say to anybody who's like above the age of, I guess, 30 at this point is, you may have seen it come out, but I was born in the equipment, right? Yep. I had managed at the age of 4 with just 3 little crates of AV equipment to mirror 2 TVs off of a single DVR. Like,
nice.
Like, it looked amazing, right? 2 TVs on complete opposite sides, and there's just this like cascade of wires and adapters going everywhere. And my dad came and he was like, "What did you do?" I was like, I wanted Mikey to stay on that side of the room and watch TV. He can't use my TV, right?
That's awesome.
Oh yeah. And then you get into the computer. Like I knew how to Google, or I guess it was Internet Explorer at the time. But like I knew how to do that better than my parents at like 6 or 7 when like Internet Explorer 6 came out.
Yeah, it's funny. Even like the not even a full generation, but like my brother is 5 years older than me, right? So my introduction into hacking actually was he had a computer that he didn't think I could hack.
Oh, really?
So it was back on like Windows XP, so I found some stuff and got to it, and by the time he got home, I had it going, and then I installed a root like admin password to where no matter what he changed his password to, I could put in my root password on his account and it would unlock it. And yeah, that was, even between that, he's like, what are you doing?
Oh, I have a little cousin who I threatened with something like that. I helped her build a computer and funded like a quarter of it. And when she was giving me like some irritating trouble, I was like, if you don't get your schoolwork done, I am going to go on your computer when you're not home. And don't think your password will stop me. I know how to get past that. And I will put a timer on your computer so it turns off. And you won't be able to stop it because I'll admin password it. Like, I love that you can actually just get through computers. You just have to figure out how to do it. Like,
well, and really that, like I said earlier, you know, it's exactly what hackers are doing. They're just finding those ways around what has been programmed, the ways the vulnerabilities and insecurities of somebody else's software.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's the simple thing that you can never prevent a hacker. You can make it less likely that they'll do it or not want to even like go through the attempt of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can get a security camera for your house and it's a deterrent, but if someone wants to bust your door down, they're gonna do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I mean, if you like think about it for long enough, you're like, oh my God, there's nothing I can do to stop people from getting into my computer. And it's like, well, okay, you're not gonna stop them, but what can you do to try and negate the effect or just deter them from doing it?
Right.
And that's what I push people to do, because it's like, no, you're not gonna stop them.
No, yeah, and it really is. I mean, no matter how hard you work, somebody else is gonna work just as hard or harder and push their way through.
Well, do you remember there was an Apple launch for one of the iPhones, and they were like, "This is unhackable," and then I think it was a 12-year-old a day later was like, "I broke it."
Yeah, got the jailbreak.
Or like with the GPUs, the NVIDIA GPUs, they're like, "We're gonna make it so you can't crypto mine with it," and then it's like, oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's the code to stop it so that you can do it again, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, people really, in cases like that, people like to have freedom with the stuff that they've bought. It's just like the, I forget what it's called, the Freedom to Repair Act, where, Apple and other companies have made it so hard to get the parts and do the repairs that need to be done so that you have to go to a like certified technician.
I'm not licensing this from you. I'm purchasing the product.
It's that same viewpoint of, I paid for it, I should be able to do the repairs or find somebody who's able to do it other than who I bought it from. Same thing with like jailbreaks and stuff, I paid for the device, I should be able to modify it.
I should be able to do what I want with the product that I purchased.
And that can come with, you void your warranty, you don't get future updates, stuff like that. But you should still have the option to do it because you paid for it.
Yeah, it's personal choice. You should be able to do what you want.
Yep.
Like I tried to fix my last laptop I had. I think broke in 6 months, right? The GPU and the processor both warped. The chip itself warped because I tried to go in and actually repair it and like apply new thermal paste, and I looked at that little thing and I was like, voided warranty. Whatever. I tried for a year to get them to like actually cover my warranty on it, and they were like, no. And I was like, all right, well, I'll do it myself. Until I found out that those chips were warped. What do you do with that at that point?
Not much you can do at that point.
No. So, what have you hacked then? Because you gave me a devious smile for a second, so I gotta know what is your anonymous secret?
It's gonna remain anonymous secret.
You gonna put on your little mask?
Yep. That'll remain anonymous.
All right. Well, I think we've gone through a lot here. We talked about how coding works, and it still blows my mind because my poor dyslexic brain can't handle it. We talked about your new product launch, which I think is really cool, and I'm gonna have to look at. We'll see what I can even do with it.
Hey, cheapest plan's $1 a month.
It certainly is, and it's like absolute time.
That's very true.
You're like the small, medium, and large, and it's like, well, if you're gonna get the medium, might as well get the large, right?
That's true.
At that point, it's like get the small.
And if you're gonna get the monthly, you may as well get the yearly.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's cheaper yearly.
I saw that. I was like, you
save $20.
You devious.
It's pretty common.
I know. I mean, your pricing's not wrong. I think it's pretty spot on.
Yeah, we tried to keep it as low as possible because again, we're really focused on small businesses in local areas. So
yeah, I feel that's what the services that I try to offer here for is the small businesses.
I think you're doing a great job with it too.
Yeah, it's hard to do it all as a one man, right?
Oh yeah, it's a challenge, but you push through it and it's worth it.
Yeah. Well, I think this would be a good place to end off on, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming in, Taylor. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, same.
I mean, this is what I want to do, right? Is have conversations and teach people and maybe get them interested. Hopefully, some more people were interested in coding because, I mean, it's not something I can do with my dyslexia. I mean, I probably could, but it'd suck. But
autocomplete helps.
You have to spell the beginning of the word right to have that proc.
Fair. That's a fair point.
But no, we went through some stuff. We talked about coding, talked about a little bit of hacking because I really want to talk to you about it because that's something that's so cool to me. And there's like that whole misconception of how it actually works, and it's so much lamer than what they depict in the movies.
Oh, yeah, it really is. I mean, even depending on what you're working on, development and engineering can be extremely boring. But yeah, no, it's not ever like a dude in sunglasses going at it on a green and black screen.
Yeah, you see all that code just popping up, and it's like, that's not how it works. But yeah, I mean, we'll end it on a pretty happy note with it, right? So again, thank you, Taylor, for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
This was the Zeneration Nation Podcast, episode 2. If you guys enjoyed, feel free to leave a like. It really helps a lot. Subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell, and leave a comment because I legitimately am going to go read through every single one of them. And if you have any suggestions for the show or have anyone you would like to see on, I am willing to do video calls for the channel in case there's just someone who can't make it down here. So do all of those things. And again, have a nice day.